By combining the art of storytelling with boundless imagination and cutting-edge techniques, Mr. Lucas has transported us to new worlds and created some of the most beloved and iconic films of all time.
George Lucas recently shared one of his regrets. He told a reporter, "I never got the experience that everyone else got to have. I never got to see Star Wars." Well, George, let me tell you, you missed out. It was really good.
Since 1977, Star Wars has been a staple on American culture and one of the biggest impacts on the film industry. George Lucas created an everlasting empire, or so it seemed. George Lucas created and ran Star Wars until October 30th, 2012, the day that would change Star Wars forever. George Lucas had sold Lucasfilm to Disney and made $4 billion in the process. The reactions from this purchase were mixed.
George Lucas, the creator, the founder of the universe of Star Wars, sold Star Wars to the company Disney.
Disney has bought Star Wars for $4 billion.
Disney has bought out Lucasfilm. That's right, George Lucas has signed over Lucasfilm to Disney.
Casual fans and some die-hard fans seem to be content with the purchase, and we all knew that this meant more Star Wars. They even announced an Episode 7 for a 2015 release date.
George Lucas does this really wise decision and sells Star Wars to Disney. You know what that means, don't you? More sequels. And they're going to be bloody awful.
Star Wars 7 was never something that wasn't going to happen, okay? We just have to deal with the fact that it's here.
Nobody watches this shit. Nobody wants to see this shit. Fucking Disney.
However, there were some fans who were not happy with Lucas selling Star Wars. Most of the die-hard fans feared that this would be too much Star Wars, and that the films would be horrible. Fans who were okay with the purchase argued that the new Disney Star Wars couldn't be worse than the prequels that had came out under Lucas.
6 seconds, anything else left to say? I hate the prequels.
Shortly after the purchase of Star Wars, in November of 2012, there were rumors that Star Wars The Clone Wars would end after its 6th season aired. The show was loved by all fans and financially successful, despite the poorly received Star Wars The Clone Wars movie that came out in 2008. The future of the show was in question, considering Disney's longtime rivals, Time Warner, owned Cartoon Network. However, since Cartoon Network only licensed the Clone Wars show for 5 seasons, it seemed reasonable that Disney would put Season 6 of the Clone Wars on Disney XD. However, we had no official statements to confirm any of the rumors. Later that same year, in late December, rumors were circulating that Kathleen Kennedy, new president of Lucasfilm, was looking to sign J.J. Abrams as the director of Episode 7. J.J. was quick to shoot down any rumors. There was even some talks about Ben Affleck directing the new Star Wars film. He implied that he turned down the job. But a month later, January 24th, 2013, after a visit from Kathleen Kennedy to inspire him, J.J. Abrams was confirmed to be the director of Star Wars Episode 7.
J.J. Abrams is directing Star Wars Episode 7. That shit is official.
This is a man who's a fan of Star Wars. Okay, this is somebody who grew up with it. This is somebody who has it close to his heart. This is somebody who can make it good again.
Most fans were pleased with this information. JJ was well loved in the sci-fi community with his revival of the Star Trek franchise, his own TV show called Lost, and his Bad Robot production company. There were some fans who were not excited for JJ to direct the film, but most fans were okay with it. Even George Lucas had nothing but kind words to say for JJ. JJ would also co-write the movie with Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote the screenplay for episodes 5 and 6. With the writers and directors set, the creation of episode 7 began.
Closing the door without any wiggle room whatsoever.
Right. There is no episode 7.
January 28th, 2013. Lucasfilm canceled the 3D releases of the Star Wars franchise. The Phantom Menace was back on the big screen in 3D earlier in 2012, and was clearly just a quick cash grab for Lucasfilm.
Stop this 3D nonsense!
Fans weren't upset about this news. It wasn't a big deal since most of the fans didn't care to see Star Wars on the big screen again just because it was in 3D. Disney knew this, and in an attempt to prevent oversaturation of the market, they canceled the 3D releases in order to focus on the newest trilogy.
Do you really want to see Jar Jar Binks in 3D?
February 5th, 2013. CEO and chairman of Disney, Bob Iger, announced that Star Wars would officially have 2 spin-off films. There was no statement on what these films would be about, other than that they were not part of the Star Wars saga, and that they would focus on individual characters. Fans were excited with this news, considering this meant Star Wars could go in a different direction than we had originally planned. Instead of following the Skywalker name, these new films could create new stories.
There's possibility there may be another offshoot movie somewhere about an offshoot character. in that world.
But not
But not
episode
about
7.
Luke Skywalker.
Lucasfilm and the Clone Wars supervising director Dave Filoni have announced that Star Wars The Clone Wars, the television series, is over and that the 5th season that just came to an end was the final one for the show.
Sadly, on March 11, 2013, Lucasfilm had officially canceled The Clone Wars in the middle of its Season 6 production.
I was expecting Season 6 and 7, you know, there was no thought in my mind that The Clone Wars was ending. I mean, I didn't expect it. I really didn't.
Eventually, the show would finish its 6th season on Netflix with only 13 episodes instead of its usual 22 episodes a season. With this news also came the announcement that Lucasfilm was no longer working with Seth Green, the creator of Robot Chicken, for the new Star Wars show, Star Wars Detours. This would have been another Star Wars comedy type show, but instead of being geared towards adults like Family Guy and Robot Chicken Star Wars, this was meant for a younger audience. Most fans were okay with the Detours being shut down, considering it did not seem like one of the George Lucas's greatest projects, but the Clone Wars being canceled was the biggest letdown. This news led to speculation and rumors that LucasArts might also shut down as well. LucasArts was still working on 2 Star Wars games, one called Star Wars First Assault. This game was being made as an answer to the rise of Call of Duty and Battlefield games, and George Lucas wanted to make a Star Wars game to rival them. The other more popular Star Wars game, Star Wars 1313, was also being worked on. And after LucasArts had trouble with making The Force Unleashed 3 and Battlefront 3 in the years prior to Disney purchasing the Star Wars franchise, fans were really excited for the promising game 1313. But Disney had declined to talk about the game for many months, leading many fans to correctly predict the future of the game.
LucasArts officially shut down.
Sadly, on April 3rd, 2013, LucasArts had officially been shut down by Disney, laying off all 150 staff members.
LucasArts is just gone. They've been around forever.
They were like, they started my childhood of gaming.
Disney had publicly stated that the games could be licensed out to other companies, but inside sources at LucasArts claimed it was unlikely and stated, with the teams now basically being dispersed, I think both games are basically dead forever. Fans were not happy with the news. Within a month, Disney had canceled The Clone Wars and shut down LucasArts, 2 beloved parts of the Star Wars franchise. The future of Star Wars seemed somewhat bleak at this point. Fans were upset about these decisions made by Disney and Lucasfilm. And on May 6, 2013, EA received the licensing rights for Star Wars games and signed a 10-year contract. This meant that EA oversaw publishing of every Star Wars AAA game for a decade. The companies that would develop these new Star Wars games were Visceral Games, BioWare, and DICE. President of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, said that our #1 objective was to find a developer who could consistently deliver our fans great Star Wars games for years to come. It's hard to pinpoint the exact reaction of the fans. The thought of DICE making Battlefront 3 and BioWare making Knights of the Republic 3 was very exciting for most, but the games being published by EA made fans concerned. EA doesn't have the best track record for fans, and most Star Wars fans were sure that the season passes and microtransactions were coming. May 20th, 2013, Lucasfilm announced a new show called Star Wars Rebels that was being created by Dave Filoni, the main man behind Star Wars The Clone Wars. Fans were excited for a new show in the Star Wars universe, and with Dave Filoni in charge, fans were expecting a good show. This was the first show under Disney's new Star Wars, and fans would only have to wait until fall of 2014 to see the new show.
Our DICE studio is using Frostbite 3 to create an all-new blockbuster. Let's take a look.
June 10th, 2013. At E3, EA confirmed many speculations on their first Star Wars game, as they said they were working on a new Star Wars Battlefront developed by DICE. Needless to say, Star Wars fans were ecstatic over the news and the gameplay shown. Finally, fans had a Star Wars game that they could look forward to.
The expanded universe for the books and the comics and the video games, the whole universe is now not canon with the movies.
One of the biggest blows to the most die-hard Star Wars fans was when Lucasfilm announced that they would no longer continue with what became known as the Star Wars Expanded Universe, also known as the EU. This consisted of books, games, and comics that expanded the Star Wars universe. Many fans fell in love with Timothy Zahn's Thrawn trilogy and the amazing games like Knights of the Old Republic. While George Lucas stated the expanded universe is not the same as the canon Star Wars, like the movies and the Clone Wars show, the stories and creativity of the expanded universe was loved by the most passionate fans. On April 25th, 2014, Lucasfilm said the expanded universe would turn a new page by introducing a Lucasfilm story group that would oversee all creative development for Star Wars. Lucasfilm said this move to stay away from the expanded universe was in order to tell new stories and to allow filmmakers to have complete creative freedom.
Help me, George Lucas. You're my only hope. Darth Disney is destroying the expanded universe.
This move outraged longtime EU fans. It has been years since this move, and you will still to this day find many Star Wars fans that miss what the expanded universe had to offer.
Everything, according to you guys, is gone. These books, the games, everything, it means nothing. Nothing at all.
May 22nd, 2014, Gareth Edwards was announced as the director of the first spin-off film. Fans were happy with this choice, since he made the blockbuster hit Godzilla. In early October of 2014, Star Wars Rebels premiered on Disney XD. The show felt geared towards an even younger audience than the Clone Wars show. The Clone Wars felt like a kid's show, but it could also be taken more serious and have a larger audience. Rebels disappointed the fans that wanted it to be more like the Clone Wars, but people enjoyed the show and Disney XD ordered a second season just a day before the show premiered on October 3rd, 2014. One of the best days for Star Wars fans in the past 6 years, the day The Force Awakens teaser trailer was released. Fans and people all around the world watched the teaser trailer online and rejoiced as new characters popped on screen, and the reveal of the Millennium Falcon at the end of the teaser trailer made Star Wars fans more excited for Episode 7 than ever. It felt like Star Wars was back, and the theaters felt it too. Countless movie ticket sites crashed as fans bought their tickets online more than a year in advance. The excitement for this movie was something a generation of fans will never forget. Into the year of 2015, on March 12th, Bob Iger had announced that Gareth Edwards was to direct the first spin-off film titled Rogue One. He also stated that Rian Johnson was to direct and write Star Wars Episode 8, which was set to be released on May 26, 2017. This move shocked many fans. The announcement of Rogue One got cautiously optimistic reactions from the fans. However, the more surprising news was that Rian Johnson, who at the time was relatively unknown to most Star Wars fans, was put in charge of directing and writing Episode 8.
Clearly, Disney doesn't mind giving guys with fairly short resumes the keys to these big fancy cars that they got.
Johnson's best movie at the time was Looper, and he was known for directing the best episodes of the Breaking Bad series.
This is not a crazy choice, but it's a pseudo-risky choice and an interesting one, which is...
Many fans were confused on why he was writing and directing the film. Unlike J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson had no co-writers. In the end, 2015 was considered a very good year for Star Wars fans. The show Rebels wrapped up its first season, and most fans of Star Wars enjoyed it, and were excited for the announcement of the second season. Star Wars Celebration revealed the Force Awakens trailer that broke the internet. Fans all around the world cried tears of joy when Han Solo entered the trailer. It felt like everyone was talking about Star Wars. E3 2015 also showed gameplay for Star Wars Battlefront by EA that looked amazing. The graphics were perfect, the game used effects from the original trilogy to really immerse the player into the Star Wars world. The game looked amazing, and fans were happy to hear the game would come out a month before The Force Awakens hit theaters. Many fans were excited at this point for the future of Star Wars. It felt like new fans had joined the Star Wars fandom. It felt like Star Wars was back. In a bittersweet moment, with Star Wars being back meant more film. The second spin-off film was revealed to be a Han Solo film about a young Han Solo. This film would be directed by Christopher Miller and Phil Lord, and released on May 25th, 2018, almost a full year after Episode 8 was planned to be released. Fans were not so happy with this. Most felt, and still do, that this film was pointless. The talent behind the film was no issue, but many fans felt that there was high demands in other films like the Kenobi film or the Boba Fett spin-off film. Fans were disappointed with this news, but there was still hope it would be good considering the people working on it. And on August 15th, 2015, Colin Trevorrow was announced as the director for Star Wars Episode 9. Colin was coming off two very well-received movies, Jurassic World and Safety Not Guaranteed. Fans were surprised Disney had 3 separate directors for the new trilogy, and the choice for Colin was received with relatively positive reactions. The reactions from people depended on how they felt about Jurassic World, but mostly it was the same reaction to Rian Johnson.
Well, today I'm thrilled to announce the next chapter in the long and exciting history between Disney Parks and Star Wars.
Another thing Star Wars fans had to look forward to was Star Wars attractions at the Disney resorts. Fans got to see one of the perks of Disney owning Star Wars, and that was the soon-to-be Star Wars lands. The Star Wars attractions won't open until 2019, but fans already planned their trips to Disney to see them. November 17th, 2015, EA's Star Wars Battlefront was released. Some of the hype of the game had died out. Some people noticed it was a $60 game with no campaign, and a $110 game with no campaign if you get the season pass. Also, some people wanted more than one era. EA's Battlefront had only the original trilogy era. Some fans wanted the game to be like the original Battlefront from 10 years ago, that still had 2 eras. Still, many casual fans loved the game. The graphics were great, the gameplay was fun, and it truly did feel like a Star Wars game.
Fans flocking to theaters overnight and early this morning to see Star Wars The Force Awakens.
We've got some great fans. These fans have been lined up since 8 o'clock this morning.
Funny, I actually saw episode 3 here, and the day before my son was born. And I made sure my wife was okay with it, and she said it was fine. I rushed from the hospital here, got in line, saw episode 3, and now 10 years later, I'm here with both of my boys to see episode 7, so I'm pretty pumped about it.
Then the day people all over the world had been waiting for. Some fans waited since 1983 for episode 7. Other fans were new to Star Wars. For many fans that grew up with the prequels, this was the first Star Wars film they got to see as an adult. Everyone lined up on December 15th to see Star Wars The Force Awakens. As people left the theaters, many felt happy with J.J. Abrams' newest addition to the Star Wars franchise. The film felt exactly like a Star Wars movie, and though it did have some minor complaints from fans, mostly everybody loved it, and it showed at the box office. Many people saw the new Star Wars film multiple times. The film quickly became one of the highest grossing films of all time, and everybody wanted to see what was next from Star Wars. Most likely due to seeing the film too many times, a lot of fans and people on the internet started to realize The Force Awakens didn't just feel like Star Wars, it practically felt like a remake of the original Star Wars A New Hope. Many fans were slightly upset with the film for being what they felt was a cheap copy. Other fans argue that the film is a simple, soft reboot of the franchise. While the die-hard fans debated on The Force Awakens and whether it delivered as a Star Wars film or not, the casual audience praised the film for its fun action, new characters, and nice introduction into the Star Wars franchise. Star Wars was a hit again.
I want to cry. I'm speechless.
That was way better than I thought it was going to be.
My expectations were definitely surpassed.
Good, but not great.
After ending on a very high note with 2015, Star Wars had a rougher start in 2016. Because on January 20th, Lucasfilm announced that it was going to delay Star Wars Episode 8 by 8 months. This was due to script rewrites, and fans were okay with this. You can't rush perfection, as the saying goes. Fans were okay with delaying the film if it meant making it better. Though most will admit the news was disappointing, considering Rian Johnson had 10 months to work on the script, and this delayed it, but this did mean Episode 8 would release less than 6 months before the Han Solo film, so some fans considered that a silver lining. During the month of February, Episode 8 started filming, and with all the questions fans had from The Force Awakens, they couldn't wait for the answers. The common questions fans started to ask narrowed into these two questions: who are Rey's parents, and who is Snoke? Theories on this became a common thing from the fandom. Everybody had their own theory on each question, and they wouldn't be answered until December 15th, 2017.
Old school. Yes, story.
Fans were pleased when Rogue One's teaser trailer dropped on April 7, 2016, and later that week when the full trailer was released. The movie was about a group of rebels who steal the Death Star plans just before the events of A New Hope. Fans were delighted to go back to the original trilogy era. Seeing Darth Vader and his stormtroopers on the big screen again would be a first time for those who grew up with the prequel trilogy and those who were experiencing Star Wars as kids. This new movie, Rogue One, caught everyone's eyes. This looked like a great Star Wars film, and fans wanted to see it.
Holy shit!
However, there was some backlash against the newest Rogue One trailer. Some fans were not happy with the main character, Jyn Erso, being another female lead. This may have been a reaction to the highly political time, and the feeling that Star Wars would become too politically correct and try to pander towards diversity instead of storytelling. This backlash was short-lived and did not reflect the entire Star Wars community. Most Star Wars fans simply wanted to watch Rogue One. During this time, Rebels Season 2 had finished its run. Most thought it was an improvement over the first season, and Rebels had grown its own fanbase. With Season 2 ending, Season 3 was only 6 months away, and though there was still a portion of the fans that didn't like the show, most fans thought it was a good addition to the Star Wars franchise. When E3 2016 came on June 14th, there was a lot of news from EA detailing the future of Star Wars games. DICE confirmed another Star Wars Battlefront.
Yes, in 2017 we will be getting Battlefront 2. No one should be surprised because it's EA that owns DICE and DICE makes Battlefront.
At this point, the first Battlefront by EA was a conflicted debate among Star Wars fans and gamers. Many felt like the first Battlefront lacked any content. This picture showed the 2015 Battlefront having far more content in the game compared to EA's version of Battlefront. But the first Battlefront by EA sold enough copies to guarantee a sequel, and in 2017, there would be one. Visceral Games revealed at E3 that a Star Wars narrative game. Set to release in 2018, this Star Wars game was intended to be a story-driven single-player game. Amy Hennig was in charge, which meant the game might be inspired heavily from the Uncharted series, and the small gameplay shown did excite the fandom. Respawn also announced a Star Wars third-person action-adventure game, but this is all the news that was revealed at the time of the game. 3 new Star Wars games announced in one day. Though there were fans that no longer trusted EA after the lack of content in Battlefront, the rest of the fans just wanted to play the future games.
Already, that looks incredible.
Man, I'm getting all kind of choked up, man. The amount of games.
And thank you to all our studio teams.
Fucking love Star Wars, man.
As the year of 2016 went on, Star Wars Rebels introduced its 3rd season and got very good reception from its growing core audience. President of Lucasfilm Kathleen Kennedy responded to critics about the feeling of overusing female leads. She went on to say, "I have a responsibility to the company that I work with." She said, "I don't feel I have the responsibility to cater in some way. I would never just seize on saying, well, this is a franchise that's appealed primarily to men for many, many years, and therefore I owe men something." At this time, the statement upset some fans, but this would become a popular reference point for many in the future. Many look back at this statement as proof that Kathleen Kennedy may not be fit for the role of president at Lucasfilm. But many fans ignored the statement and any negative views towards Star Wars. Because during 2016, Star Wars was alive and doing very well. No one wanted to think about it being anything but good.
Rogue One, the latest in the Star Wars series, drew out the young and old in force.
When Rogue One was released in theaters on December 10th, fans lined up to see the first standalone Star Wars film. If there was any doubt that this film wouldn't deliver, it was all laid to rest when the film started. Rogue One was a Star Wars film made to pay homage to the original trilogy, and fans couldn't get enough of it.
It was a great new story. Didn't rely on other stories. It really stood on its own. It's fantastic.
The plot twists in every part of the movie are mind-blowing. You will not see something coming and then something completely different will happen and you're like, oh my god, what is happening?
Immediately, fans wanted more Star Wars films like Rogue One. It had great action, new original characters, and countless Easter eggs and references to the original Star Wars trilogy. The Darth Vader hallway scene became an instant classic for many fans. This was a Star Wars film they would never forget.
The passing of a Hollywood legend and an American original. Carrie Fisher, whose role as Princess Leia in Star Wars vaulted her to pop culture immortality.
Despite being a decently good year for Star Wars fans, sadly at the end of 2016, we mourned the loss of Carrie Fisher. The beloved Star Wars actress had become one with the Force. The Star Wars community came together to show their support for Carrie's family.
There'll be nobody like her ever again. Leia lives in everybody's hearts and everybody's soul, and it's taken us into the future and beyond. She will be missed.
Star Wars fans will never forget Carrie Fisher. Though Leia will never be an official Disney princess, she will always be our princess.
It's about family, and that's what's so powerful about it.
In early 2017, with Carrie Fisher's passing came the question, what would become of her character in Episode 9? Rogue One featured Grand Moff Tarkin from the original Star Wars. Since the actor who played Tarkin passed away, Lucasfilm used CGI to put the character in the film. Fans began to wonder if Lucasfilm would digitally recreate Leia as well in Episode 9. Lucasfilm addressed the rumors and they said that they would not digitally recreate Leia for the next Star Wars film. This brought comfort to many fans. It was a debate among many filmgoers if digitally recreating actors is morally correct, and Lucasfilm wanted to avoid any controversy of recreating Leia.
The official title for Star Wars Episode 8 hit the internet today. It was revealed to be Star Wars The Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi. Man, this is going to be awesome.
It's not a title that I am a fan of.
I'm, excited for this news, but I almost feel like I'm very mixed right now about the title.
It's almost like we're forgetting about Return of the Jedi and the title of that and the plot of that and the implications of what that meant.
In order to cheer up the fans, on January 23rd, 2017, Lucasfilm revealed the title for Star Wars Episode 8. The film would be called Star Wars The Last Jedi. And everyone started making their theories on what this title meant. Who was the Last Jedi? Luke Skywalker or the new character Rey? And will Luke suffer the same fate as Han Solo in The Force Awakens? These were concerns and questions many fans had for the new film, but everyone was excited.
The idea of the title, The Last Jedi, that makes me think that Luke Skywalker may not live to see the end of this film.
Rebels Season 3 ended in late March. As the show went on, more and more fans started to appreciate the show, and its use of bringing back fan-favorite characters from the Clone Wars and the expanded universe, like Grand Admiral Thrawn. The show was successful for Disney, and they saw no reason to stop there.
We're at Star Wars Celebration, seeing some Star Wars stuff.
April 13th through April 16th, fans all over the world attended Star Wars Celebration, a convention for Star Wars fans. A lot of news came out during this short time. Battlefront 2 showed its first trailer. EA gave fans what they asked for and introduced 3 eras to play in. Unlike the 2015 Battlefront, which only had the original trilogy, Battlefront 2 would have every era in Star Wars, the prequels, originals, and the sequels. The trailer did its job by building the excitement for the game. This Battlefront had a campaign with a story, space battles, and free DLC, which meant no season pass. This felt like the Battlefront fans should have gotten back in 2015, so the anticipation for Battlefront 2 was building. The Last Jedi was confirmed to be a singular title by Rian Johnson, the director.
And look, in my mind, it's singular.
This answered one of the many questions fans had about the film. To add more questions for the fandom, The Last Jedi trailer hit the internet. The trailer showed the film would be a different Star Wars film, and it would focus a lot on Luke Skywalker. His words at the end of the trailer made fans ask why Luke would turn his back on the Jedi. Fans were excited to have all these questions answered when the movie came out, but for now they would have to study the trailer, as it is the norm for Star Wars fans.
So this is where I have to tell you, this is my decision as the creator of this show with Simon, that Season 4 is the final season of Star Wars Rebels.
Star Wars Rebels Season 4 also showed its trailer. Surprisingly, this would be the last season of the show. Dave Filoni broke the news, and he stated he wanted the show to end on his own terms, instead of what happened with the Clone Wars and its cancellation. This meant Star Wars Rebels would wrap up its story in the next season, but Filoni said there was more Star Wars animated shows in the works, giving some fans a peace of mind. April 25th, 2017. Lucasfilm announced that Star Wars Episode 9 will be released in theaters on May 24th, 2019. Almost a full year after the untitled solo film was set to release. But more on that later.
The Han Solo movie's directors, Miller and Lord, being dropped officially by Lucasfilm.
To the shock of many, on June 20th, 2017, directors Phil Lord and Chris Miller stepped down from the untitled Han Solo film. Both directors and Kathleen Kennedy agreed the problem was creative differences on the film. Kathleen Kennedy let go the editor of the film the same week. This seemed to put the Han Solo film in trouble, since it was already 5 months into production, and inside sources said that Kathleen Kennedy and the two directors never saw eye to eye from the beginning, leaving many fans to wonder why it took 5 months of production for changes to be made.
They should know well before there's even a release date whether there's going to be creative differences.
Something clearly happened, and now we've got a project that's almost done shooting, and they just lost their directors.
Now the question was, who would replace these two directors? Lucasfilm had a quick answer for the fans.
What was once speculated is now confirmed. Ron Howard will finish directorial duties on the Han Solo movie.
2 days after Lord and Miller had stepped down from the project, on June 22nd, legendary director Ron Howard was given the job to be the new director for the Han Solo film. Ron Howard was one of the 3 directors that George Lucas had approached to direct the Star Wars prequels in the late 90s, so if George Lucas could trust him, then surely the fans could as well. Fans were happy when Ron Howard was announced to be the director for the film, but the change in the director still caused some concern for the film, especially since it was a movie that many fans did not care to see.
My feelings about Forces of Destiny are complicated and intense.
When Disney released Star Wars Forces of Destiny, an animated short series on YouTube about female characters in the Star Wars universe and their stories, fans were not happy. Many people disliked that Disney would release shows like this. Though it was meant for a younger audience, many longtime Star Wars fans felt this was showing a lack of creativity from Disney in the Star Wars franchise. Fans will always look back at Star Wars Forces of Destiny as a disappointment for many.
People are angry that it looks like this shoddy piece of content which is pandering to a female audience, especially a young one.
When the rumors that a Kenobi spin-off film were in the works, it gained more anticipation than ever. On August 17th, it was rumored that Stephen Daldry was set to direct the standalone film. Though there was not much information on the film, the excitement from the fans grew. This is what fans have been asking for since the announcement of spin-off films in the Star Wars universe.
Colin Trevorrow has left Star Wars Episode 9.
September 5th, 2017, Lucasfilm had announced that Colin Trevorrow would no longer direct Episode 9. They made a statement that said Lucasfilm and Colin Trevorrow had mutually chosen to part ways on Star Wars Episode 9. We have all come to the conclusion that our vision for the project differ. This was a major shock to all Star Wars fans. This meant 2 Star Wars films had lost their directors in the same year. Many fans started to conclude that this was no mere coincidence. There was a problem inside of Lucasfilm, and the fans said it was Kathleen Kennedy.
Is there something going on with Lucasfilm, Christine Kennedy, and all these directors for Star Wars?
What makes it interesting is more just the pattern and the level of control that Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy seem to be wanting to exert.
Disney Star Wars is about as well run
as the DCEU.
Are they trying to control the directors too much and not give them creative space? What's really going on?
They're just turning through directors. They're just picking whatever random, trendy director and then firing them later on because it's a bad fit.
Episode 9 was the third film in the Star Wars franchise under Disney to have internal problems. Rogue One had reshoots late into the film's production, the Solo standalone film lost its directors, and now Episode 9 had lost its director as well. This was a pattern Star Wars fans were not too pleased with. A week after Colin Trevorrow stepped down from the director's chair, a familiar face took the seat.
J.J. Abrams himself is coming back to co-write and direct Star Wars Episode 9. I, for one, am really excited.
J.J. Abrams came back to write and direct Star Wars Episode 9. Abrams would co-write the movie with Chris Terrio, and the film is scheduled to be released on December 20th, 2019. J.J. seemed to be a safe choice for Lucasfilm. The majority of fans were okay with J.J. Abrams returning as the director to finish the trilogy that he started. There was still a large portion of the fan base that was not happy with the return of Abrams.
Because Kathleen Kennedy has basically told everybody, you got to go through this format when you're doing the Star Wars films. If you try to deviate from what we have set for you, again, that's why Lord and Miller are gone from the Han Solo film. Clearly, that's why Colin Trevorrow is gone now.
I don't necessarily want J.J. Abrams to come back. I'd rather see Rian Johnson return to finish off the trilogy. But with that said, I'm fine with J.J. Abrams.
I'm kind of disappointed in Lucasfilm or Kathleen Kennedy for that matter, because we know Force Awakens wasn't a bad movie per se, but it also wasn't a good movie.
You see, I felt like, okay, J.J. Abrams did a decent job with The Force Awakens. I really did feel that. I wasn't like hated, like, oh, it's exactly a New Hope.
This was out of fear that he would rehash the original trilogy, like he did with The Force Awakens.
I'll see you next year.
The next spin-off film based around Han Solo was officially titled Solo: A Star Wars Story. The announcement came on October 17th, 2017. The reveal for the title was extremely disappointing for most fans. This was a movie the fans felt was pointless and unnecessary.
That reveal was so annoying to me. It's like, can I say the name of the picture? Oh yeah, Solo: A Star Wars Story. Man, get out of here.
Are we supposed to be oppressed?
Like, that satisfied smirk he had holding the title card.
Man, that's all y'all came up with? Solo?
I'm not interested in this movie anyway.
Right.
Even though I love Star Wars, but I feel like I want to see stories about different people.
Yeah, Star Wars universe is so big and so rich that you have so much to pull from. Why are we harping on these three characters
Exactly.
so much?
I would much rather see somebody like Ahsoka Tano get a film. You know what I mean?
Lord.
Like just because.
With the director switch, and now a title that did little to excite the fans, many wondered the film would be a disappointment.
Electronic Arts has just come out with a press release saying that they shut down the Visceral Games studios responsible for the next Star Wars game.
That same day, more disappointing news came for the fans. EA announced that the Star Wars game being developed by Visceral Games would be pushed back indefinitely. EA also shut down the studio Visceral Games. This move surprised many fans. Visceral Games was said to be working on a linear action-adventure story-based game meant to resemble the Uncharted series. EA claimed the reason they're postponing the project is because they wanted a game fans would come back to play constantly. This was EA reinstating their position on making multiplayer-only games. Not much was shown of the postponed Star Wars game. Nevertheless, many fans were anticipating the game's release since it sounded so appealing. But sadly, the game may never be what they hoped for.
You can bet your ass that whatever the final product of this Star Wars game ends up being won't be anything like the Uncharted-style Star Wars game that was originally conceptualized.
Later that month, more controversy surrounded EA. Gamers who played the Battlefront 2 beta noticed it had a progression system based around loot boxes. This meant microtransactions would be used in the game. These microtransactions can make companies like EA billions of dollars, but most gamers don't want microtransactions in their games. These loot boxes made the game feel like a pay-to-win type of game, something many casual gamers would rather avoid.
We're getting more Star Wars from Rian Johnson, man. A new trilogy.
Rian Johnson is going to be making a whole lot of money.
On November 9th, Lucasfilm announced that Rian Johnson would create a brand new Star Wars trilogy outside of the Skywalker episodic saga.
It's not like this should come as a surprise to anybody. After all, Disney did buy Lucasfilm in order to make more Star Wars movies, but it does seem like this is coming out of nowhere a little bit.
The writer and director of The Last Jedi received so much praise for his work on the film from Kathleen Kennedy and others at Lucasfilm, so they allowed him to write and direct the first episode in a brand new Star Wars trilogy that would explore new parts of the Star Wars universe. This news shocked the entire fanbase. A new trilogy announced. That meant there were 6 more Star Wars movies that were confirmed to come out, not including the other rumored spin-off film.
The first thought that popped in my head about this, aside from what it's going to be about, is that they must love Last Jedi.
Fans were excited more Star Wars. Though there was concern there would be too many Star Wars films, a new trilogy meant new possibilities that Star Wars fans have wanted forever. Fans would hold their excitement for the new trilogy, and instead look towards the near future. Rian Johnson had to prove to the fans that The Last Jedi was good enough for him to get his own trilogy.
I don't know if this guy has what it takes to make a real quality Star Wars film. That's the issue.
I mean, I would love if we went back a couple thousand years.
Sure.
I think that would be the safest option.
Yeah.
Just
so you're so
they don't want to go
far
in the
and
future.
apart from anything
Well,
that we've seen in the films.
But if you go back in the past, something that, before episode 1.
During the week Battlefront 2 was planned to be released, some fans on Reddit discovered how long it would take to unlock characters. Players would either have to buy in-game currency to quickly buy characters like Darth Vader or Luke Skywalker, or they would have to grind out over 40 hours of playing the game to unlock them. Most fans felt they shouldn't have to pay to unlock characters when the game was $60 or $80, depending on which version you got.
And look, I will buy loot boxes if the game is free to play, but I will not buy loot boxes if it's $60 freaking.
EA responded to the criticism on Reddit, stating that their intent is to provide players with a sense of pride and accomplishment for unlocking different heroes. This post went on to explain the progression system and how it works, but it fell on deaf ears. The post on Reddit became the most disliked post of all time for the site. Fans were furious, and immediately people all over the world started to cancel the pre-orders for the game. EA began to worry about the game's sales, and in order to save face before the game was released, EA said they would lower the costs of unlocking the heroes by 75% and remove all in-game purchases. Disney didn't seem very happy with all the bad media attention the game was receiving. Executives at Disney told CEO of EA to fix the situation, leading to the changes that were made. The last-minute change brought some comfort to many fans, but with the lack of content in the first Battlefront, and the controversy surrounding the second Battlefront by EA, many fans felt that EA was not the company to publish Star Wars games. This even led to a petition for Lucasfilm to revoke EA's Star Wars license, now with over 200,000 signatures. There are many gamers and Star Wars fans that will never forget what EA did to the Battlefront series. When Battlefront 2 was released worldwide on November 17th, there were many noticeable improvements from the previous installment. This game, like its predecessor before it, had amazing graphics and sounds that truly immersed the players in the Star Wars universe. Unlike the last game, this one had space battles and a campaign. The space battles were a great addition to the game and a favorite for many who played the game. Sadly, the campaign was not what fans had hoped for. The campaign received a lot of backlash for being short and a misleading story. Leading up to the game, fans were excited to play the character of Iden, the main character under the Empire. Fans loved the idea of playing from the Empire's perspective, but after a few missions, the main character and her team joined the rebellion. It even hurt more when the campaign ended after a measly 4 hours. A generic and short campaign with no story, this was a reminder of what happened to Visceral Games, and a message EA sent that their focus would not be on a story-driven game. The best part of the game was arguably the multiplayer. It was enjoyable and felt great to have huge Star Wars battles, and a game that looked and sounded like a Star Wars movie. The repetitive combat became a nuisance, however, and at the time there was a lot of bugs that affected a lot of players. Sadly, this game was a letdown. Though there was enjoyment to be found for many passionate Star Wars fans, the common feeling was this game was simply okay, but not worth the time or the money that was put into it. Fans were angry at Disney and Lucasfilm for giving EA the license to make Star Wars games. The future of Star Wars games was something that fans began to look at with concern.
I know you're gonna be mad, but I got the pre-order. But check out all the cool shit I got, man. Look at this.
You bought the fucking digital deluxe edition, Joe? You piece of shit! What the fuck? I thought they said it wasn't pay to win! What do I get?
It's clearly not pay to win.
It is rather disheartening to see the things that EA has done with the Star Wars Battlefront games, because the first two are amazing. Battlefront 2 is one of the best Star Wars games ever made. I had so many great experiences with that game, and I still look back on those memories very fondly, and it's not just nostalgia, it's a damn good game. When it comes to these newer Battlefront games, they feel insanely repetitive.
So, because now we've had, what, Force Awakens, Rogue One, there's a Han Solo thing happening, there's, 2 games have come out, so now maybe people are getting a little burned out.
Maybe.
Are you burned out, Bruce?
I'm not burned out. I was really excited about this game until everybody started shitting on it. Literally everyone. And even Lawrence, who really likes Star Wars.
Yeah. And
Wait
is over for Star Wars fans. The latest film in the saga, The Last Jedi, is now showing all across the country.
On December 15th, 2017, The Last Jedi was released in theaters. After 2 years of countless theories by the fans in anticipation of the next installment of the Skywalker saga, the film was finally here.
Since 1977, saw the first one as a kid, I think at the drive-in.
So we've been waiting for this movie for 2 years. How big of a deal is tonight?
It's always big. Any Star Wars event's always going to be huge. Even from the original release of 1977 all the way to today.
The film received praise from the critics, but as a casual audience left the theater, there was a shift in tone.
All this stuff that J.J. Abrams did set up, and think about what you want about The Force Awakens, that's fine, but stuff was set up, and a lot of it was kind of cool. They had laid the groundwork for some really cool characters and some really cool theories, and again, this was just Rian Johnson taking all of that and just burning it.
You take the most iconic character of the whole fucking saga, Luke Skywalker, and give him the most uneventful death known to man. You want to build this Kylo Ren as a monster heel? Let him shoot the fair woman Skywalker and beat him like a real fucking man.
This movie is trash, bruh. This is a whack, trash, garbage movie, and I can't believe what Disney did to me. Kathleen Kennedy, the Zack Snyder of Star Wars, it's official, needs to go. And it's hard because she's a president and she's all this part. Disney, I understand why George Lucas said he sold his film to white slavers. I understand it now. Not just Jar Jar Abrams. No, it's also this Rian Johnson guy who made a trash kids movie.
The film quickly became a very divisive talk among Star Wars fans. Plenty of fans loved and enjoyed Rian Johnson's first Star Wars film.
It's adventurous, and it has a very positive outlook. And it's something that I think connects generation to generation.
The Last Jedi had great visuals, and there was plenty of fun to be had with the action. The debate among Star Wars fans was with the choices that the film made. Some felt the film ruined the character of Luke Skywalker and gave him a weak death.
But I think he's an important part of the overall arc of the saga, and again, there's a lot of mystery about him, even within the film. So you have to fill in your own backstory. I'm sure there'll be comic books and video games and novels that tell the story, but I'm just going to break in here that everybody out there realizes he is so significantly important to this next film. You have no idea. Well, that's good to hear.
The film was the longest Star Wars film to date, and everybody agreed that it felt like it. The questions fans had from The Force Awakens led to theories on the internet. None of the questions fans asked, though, were answered. Snoke was killed off too soon, and Rey had no parents. This upset a large portion of the fandom. But there were also fans who agreed with the choices the film made, and enjoyed the uniqueness of The Last Jedi. The film received more backlash than any previous Disney Star Wars film. Fans quickly took to the internet to show their disdain for the comedy in the film, and the feeling of involving too much politics in Star Wars. As Star Wars fans debated The Last Jedi and whether it was a good film or not, it quickly became 2017's highest grossing film.
I hate the fact that this movie basically is like one ship chasing another ship.
Dun 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 dun. That's the movie. Pew 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 pew.
Looking back at 2017, it was a year that many fans started to disconnect with Star Wars. A large portion of the Star Wars fanbase were unhappy with Battlefront 2 and The Last Jedi, and they no longer wanted Kathleen Kennedy in charge, and many hated the idea of Rian Johnson making more Star Wars films. This didn't mean Star Wars lost all of its loyal fans. Many moviegoers and Star Wars fans loved The Last Jedi.
I like The Last Jedi about 100 times more than I liked it before, and that means that I love it.
Since I really did enjoy this movie, like really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was phenomenal. I think Rian Johnson did a great job, and I'm so excited for the future of Star Wars.
Fans now had to wait until May to see the next Star Wars film, the next spin-off titled Solo, a Star Wars story.
The Star Wars film franchise has been a hit worldwide for a generation, but it looks like the power of the Force doesn't reach into one of the world's most important movie markets.
The latest release, The Last Jedi, has tanked in China and was pulled from theaters after just 2 weeks.
For anyone who wasn't a fan of the president of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, they considered this more proof that she wasn't fit to be president of the company. The Last Jedi was still a hot topic in the fandom. People made fan edits of the film that had no females. Others debated Rian Johnson on Twitter. It truly was a divisive film for the Star Wars fanbase.
The Last Jedi is perfection! Star Wars is perfection!
Star Wars hasn't been good since 1983, and even that was like a B-.
Why, you stuck up, half-witted...
You don't deserve to use that reference!
On February 5th, 2018, fans watched the teaser trailer for Solo: A Star Wars Story. It definitely got the excitement for the movie up. It looked like another action-packed Star Wars film.
I'm not as worried about the film as I once was.
There were still fans who weren't impressed with the teaser trailer. The fans who were still upset over The Last Jedi said they would boycott the film and Star Wars until Kathleen Kennedy was no longer president.
Han Solo has the coolest entry in film history, right? His entrance in Star Wars Episode 4 is one of the coolest entrances ever. He's literally sitting in a cantina and shoots a guy in the middle of a conversation about how he's a rogue. Okay, that's awesome. And yes, Han shot first. Okay, and now everybody is, now you want the backstory? Like, I don't need the backstory.
Lucasfilm announced more Star Wars films on February 8th, 2018.
Game of Thrones creators David Benioff and D.B. Weiss have been tapped by Kathleen Kennedy to do a new series of Star Wars films.
These films would be separate from the Skywalker episodic saga and the Rian Johnson trilogy. This meant fans had a lot more Star Wars movies to anticipate. Some fans were excited by the news. Others felt this was too much, but most of the fan base was happy with this news. The writers were certainly talented, and this could possibly be the Old Republic trilogy the fans had been hoping for. With so many new films coming out in the franchise, Lucasfilm made one thing clear: Star Wars was here to stay. At the beginning of March, Star Wars Rebels ended its final season. The show progressively got better as the seasons went on. Season 4 was arguably the best the show had to offer, and it sent fans off with a good farewell. In the end, Star Wars Rebels did its job in creating fond memories for a younger generation of Star Wars fans.
This is a show I've been able to share with my kids, who now are 9 years old and 7 years old, to share it with each other. It's just something that makes Rebels almost sacred to me.
After Rebels had ended, Lucasfilm quickly revealed their next show. On March 18, 2018, Jon Favreau was announced to write and produce the first live-action Star Wars show. Jon worked on many films with Marvel Studios and was a great pick by Lucasfilm. This was exciting news for longtime Star Wars fans. A live-action Star Wars show has always been a unique idea that even George Lucas became interested in when he owned the franchise. The show would be a step in the new direction for Star Wars, and the only way to watch the show would be on the Disney streaming service coming in 2019. Another Star Wars show was revealed on April 24, 2018. An anime-inspired show called Star Wars Resistance, created by Dave Filoni, the man who created the Clone Wars series and Rebels. The show would air on Disney XD and be set after Episode 6 and before Episode 7. Many fans were annoyed with this news. It sounded like the previous animated show, Rebels, just in a different time period.
Just don't really know a whole lot about the galaxy in the gap between the original trilogy and the sequels, so it seems a little boring.
But there were still a lot of fans with high hopes for the show, due to the creative mind behind it, Dave Filoni. At this point, many fans wanted Dave Filoni to take over as president of Lucasfilm. Due to his work on the Clone Wars and having George Lucas as a mentor, he was a man that many Star Wars fans wanted as president of Lucasfilm.
Controversy about changing a beloved character's backstory because the writers of Solo have just confirmed that Lando Calrissian is pansexual. First of all, good for you, Lando.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
I didn't know he said that.
How can you not be pansexual in space? There's so many things.
Somehow we're turning Star Wars characters or Star Wars into some weird exotic fucking porn? I don't get it. Oh, but it's for kids.
This outraged Star Wars fans. They saw this as Lucasfilm pushing a political agenda onto the Star Wars fans. The Solo film was also reported to be the most expensive film in the franchise. This was all due to reshoots the film had under Ron Howard. Fans were not excited to see the newest Star Wars spin-off. There was still a large portion of fans boycotting the film and refusing to watch it after The Last Jedi, and what they said was poor handling of the Star Wars franchise under Kathleen Kennedy. People were unsure if the chaotic behind-the-scenes drama would hurt the film, or if the boycott would actually have an effect on the film. The questions would be answered on May 25th, 2018.
Jedis and Siths alike attended the premiere of Solo at the Grand 14 on Kali Saloom tonight.
When the film was released, Solo: A Star Wars Story was met with some praise. It was mostly a forgettable but enjoyable film. It had fun action and offered an interesting story into the Star Wars franchise, while also opening the door for more possibilities. The Darth Maul cameo at the end was a fan favorite. The turnout and the reception of the film was not too positive.
This movie springboards off of the flaws of Star Wars movies that have come before it, not the strengths. This is essentially just pick a generic sci-fi movie, slap a Star Wars label on it. That's this movie. But if new Star Wars movies are meant for a new generation, I feel like a new generation deserves better than this.
So remember when we were talking about how, oh yeah, there's gonna be a Star Wars movie every year, every 6 months or whatever, and it's gonna not be as big a deal every time a Star Wars movie comes out? Yeah, that happened. Talking about, oh, one day there's going to be a Han Solo origin story. It's going to take away all the mystery of Han Solo. Yeah, that happened too. So.
Yeah. Solo: A Star Wars Story did poor numbers on its opening weekend. The film did poor numbers on its opening weekend. Solo would be the Star Wars franchise's first flop in the box office. The reshoots on the film and the lack of marketing for it seemed to be one of the key reasons the film didn't break even. The boycott by the fans who were upset with Lucasfilm seemed to have worked. Solo: A Star Wars Story lost over $50 million for Lucasfilm and Disney. June 15, 2018, Respawn revealed the title for the next Star Wars game, published by EA.
So the Star Wars name is Jedi Fallen Order.
Woo! So Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah, so it kind of gives you some idea that you'll be playing a Jedi.
It is set to be released on holiday 2019. You play as a Padawan shortly after the events of Revenge of the Sith. Though the announcement wasn't a very exciting one by EA, the concept was very different from the Battlefront installments, so it intrigued the fan, and the game may be EA's last chance to impress the Star Wars fanbase. The last half of June was a messy one for Lucasfilm. Tom Kane, who worked on the Clone Wars series, revealed that Lucasfilm had 9 Star Wars films in various stages of production, but other inside sources said the films had all been postponed due to the recent financial failure of the Solo spin-off. These sources claimed that the Kenobi spin-off was in active development. The conflicting stories came from insiders at Lucasfilm, made the company seem a little unorganized. ABC had reported that Lucasfilm told them the rumors were inaccurate. Lucasfilm told ABC that there are still multiple Star Wars films currently in development and had not been officially announced. Shortly after this, Grace Randolph said she had inside sources that told her that Bob Iger, CEO of Disney, was looking to replace Kathleen Kennedy and find a new president of Lucasfilm. The insider also said that J.J. Abrams was offered the job, but he turned it down. Fandom began to debate on who should replace Kathleen Kennedy. Many wanted George Lucas to return, others wanted fan favorite Dave Filoni. But these possibilities could only happen if Kathleen Kennedy was no longer president, and some fans did not want her to leave. The Force Awakens and Rogue One were still well-received films that the fandom enjoyed, and these films came out under Kathleen Kennedy and her team, so the fans wanted to see what the future held, and if the rumors were true. The following month, on July 19th at San Diego Comic-Con, Dave Filoni brought joy to all Star Wars fans by announcing the return of Star Wars: The Clone Wars.
Oh!
Thank you.
Oh my god, I'm so excited. I can't believe I'm crying, but I am. I'm just like, as a Star Wars fan.
The show would return on Disney's streaming service in 2019 and debut its 7th season. Fans started to post Clone Wars saves and rejoiced for the beloved show in its return. Lucasfilm made this move due to the high demand for the return of the show from the fans. The trailer for Season 7 was truly a spectacle for Star Wars fans around the world. The following month, fans watched the trailer for Star Wars Resistance. A lot of fans were disappointed in the show being so childish, but this meant it was geared towards younger kids growing up with Star Wars. Fans were disappointed this wouldn't be another show to really excite the fandom, but the Clone Wars show was still something to look forward to, and Dave Filoni announced he wasn't going to be heavily involved with Star Wars Resistance, so fans were excited to see his future work. On September 20th, CEO of Disney Bob Iger addressed the concerns with Lucasfilm and the future of the Star Wars franchise. Bob Iger stated, "I made the timing decision, and as I look back, I think the mistake I made was a little too much, too fast. I take the blame. You can expect some slowdown." This meant Lucasfilm would shift their focus to Episode 9, but there'd still be possible films in the future. Bob Iger's announcement confirmed all the inside sources that said there would be a slowdown, despite what Lucasfilm told ABC. With the condition of the franchise at the time, this seemed to be the right move. Lucasfilm and its employees seemed to no longer care about their audience, which upset the fandom. The future of Star Wars seemed to be on the shoulders of Episode 9 and J.J. Abrams.
The fans are speaking. The fans are kind of turning on Star Wars right now.
On September 28th, fans who wanted Kathleen Kennedy to step down as president received disappointing news. Disney renewed Kathleen Kennedy's contract at Lucasfilm for another 3 years. Though Solo was a box office failure, the other Star Wars films have done tremendously well under Kathleen Kennedy. There are plenty of fans who are fine with Kathleen as president. She is a decorated producer, working alongside legendary directors like Steven Spielberg. She was also handpicked by George Lucas himself. Other fans would argue that Lucasfilm's recent failure in the Star Wars franchise meant that change needed to be made. With the contract ending in 2021, Kathleen Kennedy could potentially retire from the film industry after a historical career. Then fans may see a new president of Lucasfilm, but if Kathleen does a good job these next 3 years, she may be president for the foreseeable future.
By and large, the majority of people wanted Kathy to step down simply because they weren't happy with what was happening with Star Wars.
And that is the fact that this woman has been a disaster as the president of Lucasfilm. She's a disaster. So moving forward, what does this mean for the future of Star Wars? Is Star Wars dead?
Early October, the live-action show was titled The Mandalorian. The story would take place after the fall of the Empire and before the First Order rose to power. The title, the story, and the picture of the main character excited the fandom.
This is super exciting.
November 8th, 2018, Lucasfilm revealed another live-action show. This would be based around Cassian Andor from Rogue One. Some thought this was a great idea, to see more live-action Star Wars in the original trilogy era. Others thought this was a poor character choice for the lead of a show. This also implied that Lucasfilm would focus on Star Wars shows instead of movies in the future.
Cassian Andor is getting his own TV show. Oh wait, that's right. No one cares!
Now, if you do anything that's not a sequel, or not a TV series, or doesn't look like one, they won't do it. They say, we want something that we know.
So that's the downside of Star Wars.
That's the downside of Star Wars, and it really shows an enormous lack of imagination and fear of creativity on the part of an industry.
Since Disney purchased Lucasfilm in 2012, a lot has changed for Star Wars fans. The anticipation for another Star Wars film has dwindled due to the recent years. The media says toxic fans have ruined Star Wars, but the fans have different answers as well. The prequels also split the fandom when they were released, resulting in backlash against the creator of Star Wars, George Lucas. But now fans do miss a touch of the magic and creativity that he added to Star Wars, that many people feel may be lacking in the new films. Right now, fans feel more disconnected from Lucasfilm than ever. But that doesn't mean all hope is lost in the franchise. Many feel that 2019 has a lot to offer. Clone Wars will be returning, The Mandalorian debuts in fall of 2019, Jedi Fallen Order is planned to be released late into the year, and Episode 9 will end the year, and the Skywalker Saga. If Episode 9 is a huge hit, then fans can expect more films in the future. But if history repeats itself, and the boycott on the Solo film happens to Episode 9, and the film does poorly, then the Star Wars franchise may take a long hiatus before another film is released. Star Wars still has its loyal and passionate fans. The fandom has grown, and with the growth of the internet, fans can now share their love for Star Wars even easier. In late December of 2018, popular Star Wars channel Star Wars Theory released a fan film. It was so popular, and the community loved it so much, it was trending number 2 on YouTube. This fan film showed that the fandom can still get excited for Star Wars content, even if it's not made by Lucasfilm or Disney. Star Wars has inspired people all over the world. It revolutionized the film industry, and is more than just a movie franchise. It is a part of our culture. George Lucas has created a franchise that will go beyond him and those who helped create it. We Star Wars fans will forever be grateful to George Lucas and his impact on our lives. The fans want what's best from the Star Wars franchise, so the younger generations can grow up with the great stories that their parents did. 2019 will be a very definitive year for Star Wars, and it will determine the future of the franchise. Can the new show The Mandalorian, along with the return of the Clone Wars, excite people for Star Wars Episode 9? Or will the final installment to the Skywalker Saga be the last of the Star Wars franchise? The choice is ultimately up to the fans, who will wait to see the future of Star Wars.